Right, then we'll make a start. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to the first in our series of webinars highlighting the many ways in which school IP can help to support multi-academy trusts. We're hoping to run a webinar for multi-academy trusts each month where we'll explore new topics in terms of school improvement and improving performance. Thank you for taking the time with us today. Just a few housekeeping things first. We're recording, so as with most webinars, I'm recording this session. We'll make this recording available to all attendees, and we'll also post it on our website and social media channels. You'll find other useful webinars on our website by navigating to the School IP Deventio Education website and clicking on Information and then Webinars. There are also a list of additional resources on our website, so if you've not visited before, do take a look by clicking on Information and Resources using the URL that's on screen. We also post regular insights. These should be sent to you via our email campaigns and also shared on our social media channels. So if you're not already signed up, if you sign up to our newsletters on the website, obviously you will receive those latest insights. So lots of information, and do let us know your feedback in the chat and also highlight whether there are any other areas that you would like us to cover as part of this series. We're always looking for your input. So to the introductions. So my name is Damien Roberts. I'm a director and co-founder of Deventio Education, primarily responsible for the sales and marketing school IP. Deventio Education has been in existence since 2006, and we support a large number of educational institutions, including schools, colleges, universities, and many in the private sector. Delivering school IP and other edtech solutions, we also do websites as well. I've included my personal contact details, and please feel free to make contact with me as I'd be very pleased to pick up on any conversations following this webinar. I've also included my social media links. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Feel free to connect and join the conversation online. As part of this webinar series, we're also trying to promote our channels online, and so I thought it useful to include links here of how to find school IP on Twitter, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on YouTube. And once again, please do follow and engage with us there too. Now, if you're new to School IP, if you're not a current customer, for those of you out there who are not yet signed up to School IP, we've got a fantastic offer for multi-academy trusts. School IP is free to use for the central team at the trust, and it will support you on the main themes we're going to discuss today. Following the process of plan, implement, evaluate, and improve, you'll be able to engage with your MAT central team on staff appraisal, professional development, school improvement planning, and also self-evaluation. So simply get in touch today to take advantage of this fantastic opportunity. And so on to the main point of the day, dashboards and frameworks. We'll be looking at school IP this morning and reflecting back on this process of whole school improvement, involving planning, what it is that we're going to do, implementing the processes to bring about the improvement, evaluating our progress, which will involve the use of dashboards and frameworks, which I'll show you a little bit later, and then analysing our improvement before driving the planning phase once more. Hopefully you're all familiar with this cyclic process, and we'll be talking about some of the ways that school IP can support you. Well, in terms of planning, school IP drives the process of identifying your strategic targets, which then inform the planning process, from trust plans through to individual school development plans. In turn, these plans may then feed into departmental planning, and all this information is stored within one centralized system. You can even store other plans from key stakeholders like governors and trustees too. The plans introduce accountability, and indeed email notifications are sent to staff to inform them of their obligations. In terms of implementing the plans, School IP manages the process of staff appraisal and professional development. The next stage is what we want to discuss this morning, the evaluation of our school improvement processes using dashboards and frameworks. We'll cover this further in a moment. And finally, we're identifying the key areas for improvement that can come as part of an inspection or through your own self-evaluation and audits. And so to the first part of our webinar this morning, let's discuss the dashboards that are available within School IP. We have dashboards for self-evaluation at departmental, school and trust levels. The same is true for development plans with dashboards available at department, school and trust levels too. There's a plethora of dashboards detailing the monitoring processes like lesson observations, learning walks and performance against the latest teacher standards. There are also useful dashboards which identify the common themes for development across the trust and the impact of any CPD and training. So let's take a look at the dashboards inside School IP. Just switching across now to my School IP installation. I'm logged in here as a fictitious leader at a multi-academy trust. And when I log into School IP, in addition to performing my self-evaluation, my school development planning, my staff appraisals, and bringing all of this monitoring information together, I can also log in as a multi-academy trust, and I can see each of the schools then within our trust, and I can then be analysing performance of those schools as well. So what are the areas that we would like to analyse using our new dashboards is this self-evaluation. So going to the self-evaluation menu on the left-hand side and then clicking on the dashboard. And this will then present a nice dashboard of each of the institutions within our multi-academy trust and the self-evaluation processes or documents that they are completing as part of their improvement processes. So this will enable me to see each and every single one of those institutions, and then each of the questions upon their self-evaluation form, I can see the current status so that we can make sure that all of our schools are on with reviewing and appraising themselves against the self-evaluation criteria. And it's worth noting that we support a variety of self-evaluation frameworks. We have the Ofsted framework in there, but equally, if you use a slightly different process, we can input those into the system for you as well. And then the dashboard allows me to filter down. So I've set up some quick filters here at the top, and these allow me to filter between my primary schools so that we can keep track of their progress, and also the secondary as well. So at a glance, you should be able to see an overview of where you are in terms of your self-evaluation processes. And then equally, in terms of development planning, again, accessing the menu on the left-hand side to access the development plans, and I can click on the dashboard. And this will then, again, very easily and quickly allow me to see each of the institutions within our trust. And firstly, have they got a plan in place? So have they got activities on their plan? And what are the current status of any of these activities? So again, if you're in charge of a multi-academy trust and you're responsible for the self-evaluation, for the development planning within those schools, you can have an oversight of these processes and indeed see what's going on in each of those schools. All of these dashboards are clickable, so I can click on any item on the bar there and it will show me that information, whether it's activities that are not started, in progress, not achieved, or completed as part of this process. And just like with the self-evaluation process, you have the ability to filter them down to the primary and indeed to the secondary schools within your trust. And again, you can set up these quick filters at the top so that you have a handy set of reports that you can then refer back to. We also then have the standard reports within School IP. So this will enable us to look at things like staff objectives. So for all of our staff across the whole of the trust, we can then start to identify perhaps those staff members who are not meeting their targets. And we can then be drilling down into each of the schools to make sure that we are improving. And of course, sharing that good practice as well. And so I can be looking at staff objectives, I could see lesson observations and progress towards achieving the latest teaching standards. In addition to those dashboard displays, we also have a number of CPD reports, which are very useful. So here in terms of the areas for development, we can identify what are the common themes and development across each of the schools within our trust. We may filter these down by a common theme or area that's been identified from the outset. And then we can identify courses and activities perhaps to alleviate some of these issues within the trust. So this allows us to save valuable time and resources in terms of delivering the training that's required across the Multi-Academy Trust. And then once that training has been delivered, we can then delve into our CPD activities and courses. We can see the attendance on any of these courses and activities. And hopefully we're seeing the impact and the feedback, and they're able to give it a visual star rating as well, so that we can see how we are progressing with our activities and what impact that is having on each of the schools within our trust. So that's it in terms of the dashboards within the system. If you want to go through perhaps with your customer success manager and have a look at some of those dashboards that are available, we'd be happy to organise a separate session and run through those with you. So now let's have a look at the second part of our webinar this morning. In addition to the dashboards, we're also going to have a look at evaluating using frameworks. So in addition to the typical self-evaluation framework, which we've had in School IP for some time now, we also are starting to support a number of additional frameworks. And these frameworks vary from, there's a MAT School Improvement Capacity Framework. We have frameworks on safeguarding and sustainability, SEM. We've also created a number of bespoke frameworks for some of our Multi-Academy Trust customers. So you can create your own frameworks within the system. We can obviously help you and support you with those as well in terms of getting them inside School IP. And we're looking at establishing a number of frameworks that are going to help Multi-Academy Trust leaders to evaluate performance across the whole of their trust. So again, please do get in touch if you have other frameworks that you'd like us to consider and if you'd like to discuss this in more detail. The one I'm going to concentrate on this morning is the MAT School Improvement Capacity Framework. So this is something that's freely available from the DFE website in terms of helping Multi-Academy Trust to improve. Now, it helps Multi-Academy Trust understand their current capacity to support and drive school improvement. It's helping to build and strengthen their current capacity. And it has the potential then to grow their capacity to support more schools. Now, the MAT School Improvement Capacity Framework, the framework breaks down into 14 separate elements under 6 main headings. So these are vision, culture and ethos, people and partners, teaching and learning, curriculum and assessment, quality assurance and accountability, and then governance capability. And the framework broken down into those 14 elements, there are then a number of questions to start with, as well as additional questions to consider. And inside this framework, it describes what strong and weak improvement capacity would look like in a Multi-Academy Trust. And on the next slide, I've got an example of this document. Like I say, it's freely available from the DFE website. So what we have done is we have taken this framework, this series of questions around the school improvement capability of a trust, and then we have diced up each of the questions, and we've also put the guidance against it in terms of what weak and what strong capacity to improve would look like. And we've mocked that up then inside School IP using our audits. Again, this is freely available to you as a multi-academy trust. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to use this for your central team. And what we've done is we've modeled then each of the sections, each of the questions, and then we allow you to actually rate or grade yourselves against the criteria underneath. So again, you can work out what are the areas that perhaps need your attention. So again, let's take a look. So I'm going to dip now into School IP, and we're going to, from the left-hand side, select a new option called Audits. So this will show us each of the frameworks, the audits that we have available within my version here of School IP. And so we support a variety of these audits, and indeed you can add your own audits into the software as well. So again, the one I'm going to focus on is the MAT Assurance Framework. And again, this has been developed by the DFE. It's freely available on their website, and I'll post a link in the chat afterwards. So once we go into a framework, what this enables leaders within the Multi-Academy Trust to do is to actually rate themselves against the criteria. So if we start here in terms of the vision, culture, and ethos, in here, the first question then asks, does the MAT have a clear vision of what excellent education looks like in practice? And then we are able to select the criteria that we feel best matches the current position of the trust. Okay. So obviously somebody can go through and evaluate using this helpful criteria, evaluating against that school improvement capacity framework. And then obviously we have some work to do in here where we've identified those areas that are weak. And also we may wish to be talking in terms of our self-evaluation about the strengths that we have experienced within the trust as well, and sharing that with other key stakeholders like the trustees. So in making this electronic, we are able to then obviously filter down to the different rating of questions there. And also we can identify from the dashboard how we have performed in each of the key criteria areas. So again, at a glance, I can glance down and we're looking for where are the areas in terms of weakness, and those are the areas that we need to address. And if I click on those donuts there, it will then identify the 3 sections of our audit. So these are the areas that we are weak. And then we might be devising how we're going to improve these areas. And our feeling again is that this will then lead to activities in terms of your trust development plan, in terms of creating objectives and activities on your plan, and assigning those to key staff within the organization to make sure that we are trying to address these areas, but also that we are re-evaluating at key points throughout the year. So that gives you a flavour of the different types of audits that we have within School IP. And as I've said, we support many different types of these audits. We're trying to develop a bank of them so you can use those straight out of the box. But also, if you have your own audits that you wish to include within the system, you can either add those yourself or you can send them over to us and we will import those for you free of charge. So finally then, a reminder really of the key areas in terms of School IP and how it can help these processes in terms of managing those audits and the frameworks. So in terms of planning, we have things in place like the school development plans. It helps to identify the strategic targets. We then have the implementing where we're actually doing the work in terms of our staff appraisals, making sure that our appraisal targets are lined up with those strategic targets for the trust and indeed the schools. And then also making sure that our professional development is targeting those needs within the schools and indeed the wider trust. We're providing you with a comprehensive framework then in terms of evaluating. So there's audits, there's frameworks, there's self-evaluation, and also the trust view across each of the schools and how they are performing. And then the idea is that this leads to overall improvement. So identifying those key areas for improvement will then drive back into your planning so that you are implementing those processes ready for improvement within the short term. So in summary today, there are lots of ways that school IP can help in terms of multi-academy trusts. And so what we're trying to do as part of this monthly webinar series is to actually identify some of these key points for trusts, which are available free of charge. And so we would ask that you would engage with us, obviously, to utilize some of these features within your trust and to see exactly how we can help. If you're not already using school IP, why not? It's free to trust, so you can simply contact me today. We can create a database, set you up, and make sure that you are getting the best out of the system. So do contact us and get started today. Next time, we're looking to look at the improving stage and how the key priorities for improvement are perhaps identified as part of your audits and frameworks and self-evaluation processes. And then how do these priorities feed into your planning and influence the appraisal targets for staff? And how does that work perhaps at school level? And then how does that then feed into the multi-academy trust and perhaps helping you to achieve your strategic goals in terms of improvement? So I'll be advertising that webinar soon, and please do join us then. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I do appreciate you taking the time out to have a look at school IP and how we can help multi-academy trusts. Finally, if you are a new customer, if you are looking to get involved in terms of school IP, then the number's there on screen. And as I said, it is free of charge, so do contact us today. Existing customers, we are very happy to support you. So contact the customer care team, discuss turning on the audits and to receive the free training. We'd be very interested to understand what sort of audits and frameworks you currently use within your schools and the wider trust, and obviously employing those within the school IP framework. And then, as I said before, please do follow us on social media. There's lots of things going on. We're trying to get our messages out there, and certainly social media would be one of those areas that we would like to engage with you. So do follow us on there and join the conversation. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you next month.